Sorry, we just had to jump into that. The game would not wait for your explanation, Torch.
That's all right.
All right, up here at the top right position, one of the best foreigner Terrans that's out there. His name comes from a Jinro, or God, I messed that up.
Jinro.
Comes from that.
Comes from that soju bottle there. It's made by a company called Jinro. There he is, Liquid Jinro. Liquid, of course, referring to the website teamliquid.net. If you haven't visited, I definitely recommend you checking it out. It's got a lot of good resources to use there.
Yeah, and these community sites are helping.
ASD for you?
We don't dislike ASD. We just want to help Team Liquid out there, and then the intro came really fast. The big justifiable moose on. We were justified in what we did, right?
Yep.
It was justifiable.
So as I was saying, little intro guy being rude. The community sites do a great job of exploiting the esport of StarCraft 2. Team Liquid was one of the first, but we are seeing a lot of other ones come out as well. Reddit, well played. Twitter. I don't know.
Yeah, Twitter is the new esports site. You should definitely use it. You should follow me at FXO Wolf. You should follow Torch at Torch Gaming.
Or GOMTV.
You should follow GOMTV. It's not GOMTV Net, it's just GOMTV.
Sorry.
Told you off there, Torch. Now, Jinro did go for a gas first yet again, whereas his opponent is going for a 1 barracks expand, so this could end up very interesting.
This is actually really good for Jinro if you can get those early tech units out against the fast expansion of your opponent. You can limit a lot of his ability to expand and take down a lot of the SCVs that he's creating.
Indeed. ASD was able to get in there with that SCV. A lot of time you see players like Jinro or anyone who does this type of gas first build wall off, because the first sign that your opponent is going for a gas first is the orbital timing. If your orbital's later than mine, you must have done a gas first. Also, you might have been able to tell by the fact that Jinro didn't have a Marine right away, so really nice scout timing by ASD.
Yeah, and although he did scout that there is going to be this early tech, he decides to still throw down the command center anyway. Sometimes you'll see players change their build based on the scouting that they get.
The problem with that, though, for this particular build is if you go gas first, you don't have a lot of other options. You're kind of stuck. If you don't make gas, you can't tech up. You have to either make a command center or proxy like 4 barracks and do it the best FOU type of move.
Or you can do a variation on this build, which is what Boxer is using, where he gets the barracks first with no gas, and then he drops down 2 refiners just before getting the command center. I haven't looked at the numbers of it quite yet, but it might give you the gas that you need to be able to tech up not too much later, yet still get that command center out.
People talk about Boxer doing that a lot. He was one of the first people that figured out kind of how to fast expand with when to get the gas, because we saw players like Ensnare try to fast expand in Rainbow back in Open Season 1 and 2. Rainbow actually loved his fast expanding in TVT, but he didn't know how to hold pushes. He didn't know when to get his gas. He tried to hold with Marines and bunkers, and then the siege tanks came, and he struggled a lot. People started to figure out Boxer, one of the first ones to figure it out, really.
He's done a lot for the sport, and he will continue to rally and come back. He has dropped down the Code B, but he's an excellent player.
Excellent indeed. Jinro is going to be going for those Banshees. He will be getting Cloak as well. There it is. Researching, when your opponent goes for a gasless expand like this, Banshees can be quite good. Now, there are 2 different ways of doing this Banshee type of build in TVT. There's the Foreigner style, which I like to call the Foreigner style because foreigners generally do it, where you go for the economy, you go for the SCVs. Now, the Korean way of doing this is to attack your opponent's, this SCV is going to get in here. Oh, misclick by Jinro. I think he meant to raise the other one. He lowered the second one, and now everything is known. That is a huge blunder by Jinro.
Yeah, he's not going to be happy about that one.
Oh, and that itself is going to really frustrate him. I mean, the fact that he saw what was going on is very bad, but Jinro himself is going to be a little tilted mentally after that happens, so it's very frustrating to play from that situation.
And it did happen last game as well. He had that middle supply depot down, so ASD was able to get a little extra scouting information, which can really, like, when you see a build like this, you suspect certain things are coming, but just a suspicion isn't going to give you 100% confidence to go for the counter. But when you get that absolute, this is what your opponent's doing, it just makes you feel very, very confident.
This is a small victory for Jinro. He may catch all of these Marines, will make his Banshees that much more effective. Nice micro on the Hellions. That was incredible Hellion micro.
Yes, that was beautiful. He only lost a single Hellion. He's now going to be going up against a lot smaller number of Marines. Cloak is finished, so he can start to use that to his advantage as well.
Yep, and there are enough scans to deal with this, but the problem is, if he micros the Banshee correctly, Banshee will never die. And that's so problematic dealing with Cloak Banshees without Vikings. It's almost impossible to do. Oh, very careful micro by Jinro.
And Jinro just trying to get a few extra hits on those Marines from the Hellion so that it softens them up a little bit. Second Banshee coming in, so he should be able to do a lot of damage here. He can keep these Marine numbers down like you were talking about, the reinforcing Banshees can do a lot of damage.
Exactly. And this Banshee may get scanned here. The Viking is about to pop out. He wants to keep that depot alive. He's trying to distract the Banshee to keep the depot. Here's the Viking. He's going to scan. We'll get a shot of it.
Yep. The first Banshee does go down. However, it was almost out of energy anyway, so his use was diminishing quite quickly.
Yeah.
And the second Banshee is the one that's going to really do some damage here.
He does have enough for more scans, but he doesn't want to waste them. Wants to use them when he can kill the Banshee for sure. Now, what I was saying earlier is the Korean style of doing the Banshee harass is to kill units and not SCVs and go for a timing attack to punish your opponent for going for a fast expand.
Yeah.
And that Banshee does get one kill and then has to back away.
Jinro isn't going for any super early timing attack. He's actually trying to out-expand his opponent. His expansion is finished. He's already got his base saturated. So while he's behind on SCV... Oh, wow, he actually got ahead on SCVs. It's 33 to 32. Normally you'd be slightly behind on SCVs, but the thing is that your SCVs are mining at a higher efficiency.
Exactly.
So you're on 2 bases compared to his 1. That it actually balances out quite nicely.
Here comes that Banshee in here again. She is about to run out of energy, but she will get a few kills here. Does back away.
And the Viking is going to chase. It's very difficult to get out from a position like this, but if your opponent, or if the Viking mismicros slightly, you can actually get the Banshee away.
Looks like that Banshee will go down though. One more shot will do it. She does go down. 37 to 32 SCVs, like you were saying, Jinro pulling ahead just slightly in that worker count. As far as supply goes, though, he is a little bit behind. ASD has a pretty solid force, which is kind of funny because usually it goes the other way when someone goes for a gasless expand.
Yeah.
They're the one who gets behind in units, whereas you're behind in economy.
And ASD actually realizing that he does have a strong army right now. He's going to push. He's bringing a lot of SCVs to his natural.
Yeah,
Jinro,
he doesn't have really any tanks. That's going to make it very difficult to defend this. Nice Hellion swipes there, though.
Siege mode has just started. It's not going to be finished for this first battle. That's going to be pretty critical.
Some Hellions might get caught here.
One goes down, one at half health.
Those Hellions are so critical here. ASD actually going to siege up very patiently. If you siege up and control the ramp, that means Jinro can't reinforce at all. Any units he tries to send towards that ramp will get shelled.
He also gets supply blocks, so he can't get any more reinforcements after this wave that is building right now. This is really not what Jinro needs to have happen. He did a supply drop, so he can continue to build, but he needs to get the actual supply depots up and not waste his energy on supply drops. A tank getting caught out in the open. It dies very, very quickly.
Huge blunder by Jinro. And now this Viking battle is going to go on, and it looks like Jinro may have the upper hand. No, he does not, because ASD brings the second Viking. Also, his Viking was able to get the first shot. Jinro essentially has 5 pre-igniter Hellions. That is his army. Can he hold this?
If he can run in there and take out a lot of the Marines, then he has a bit of a chance to get the siege tank into position. His Cloak Banshee is also doing a really nice job.
The Banshee move was great. Looking back, he does have enough energy for a scan. He wants to scan at the appropriate time. That was kind of weird. He backed off there, got a little nervous, I think. Didn't know how many siege tanks there were on the cliff. Didn't want to run his Marines forward with the scan.
Yeah, but ASD being very, very conservative. He's saving all of his scans, or he was saving all of his scans for, or all of his energy for scans, but he's actually dropping mules now, and he is moving in for another attack. If he can take down this Banshee, he's going to feel a lot safer. There will be no sort of air attack coming from Jinro, and without that air attack, the massive tank army from ASD will be able to move in on the Blue Flame Hellion army of Jinro.
He's going to take out these depots. Jinro really hurting in supply, keeps losing these depots, keeps getting supply blocked. Oh no, Jinro moving his tanks into his opponent's range during a scan, taking a lot of extra hits here, trying to use those Hellions to absorb shots, but he's losing so many SCVs. The tanks barely being kept alive by Jinro's nice SCV repair timing.
But Jinro doing a nice job of taking out this last Viking. Once that goes down, he will be able to have control of the air. This Banshee will be able to do a lot more damage, slowly peck at these Marines. If the Marines move forward too far, they will get taken out by the siege tanks of Jinro. Jinro doing a great job of defending against this. Wasn't looking good for him for a little while. He did lose a lot of supply. He did get supply blocks.
He's going to catch these Marines as well. Sorry to cut you off. Oh, maybe not.
No, he's actually sending these Hellions all the way around. He's going to try to get a run by on the expansion of ASD. If he can get a few nice flames off, he will be very, very far ahead. He's actually 59 SCVs to 53. So Jinro doing an amazing job of holding on here.
Yeah, I actually thought he was going to die. I think if ASD had pushed forward a little bit faster before siege mode for Jinro was done, he would have killed him, but he can't know that. And hold that thought, Hellion's coming into the natural here.
Almost. No.
Almost killing a lot of those SCVs, but Jinro has taken a 15 supply lead. ASD has made a third command center, but even so, Jinro has a pretty solid army now. He's got an SCV lead. He's taking his own third. Now he can be the one who's aggressive. He's got air control. He can push forward with his siege tanks very carefully. If he plays this patiently, he should be able to catch up.
Yeah, and he's getting an armory now. He's going to be able to get out some Thors if he wants to, or he can also get the mech upgrades that he needs to be able to get that slight advantage. You can have a lot smaller number of units if you have +2 over your opponent, and just be a lot more efficient with your army.
This is true. Right now, Jinro has 3 factories. He's made a 4th factory. He's got 1 with reactors on it with those.
But these blue flame Hellions are going to get caught. It's not what he wanted to have happen right now. He loses 2 instantly. There's no concussive shell quite yet, so the other 2 are going to be able to get away. However, ASD is going to be pushing into Jinro's main army and need to retreat. Jinro once again using a floating barracks to prevent any sort of expansion, get some scouting going on, and be able to produce some Marines here and there.
Nice air control moves by Jinro, using that 1 Banshee to just force ASD home. If you have that air control, that 1 Banshee, if controlled properly, just forces ASD to turn around. I love that he's doing that. He's not just going, oh, I'm just going to make this Banshee. He knows he has air control, makes the Banshee in reply. He knows he has Cloak.
Jinro looking like he was a little bit behind early in the game. He probably was not too happy with the SCV getting in for his supply depot wall, but it looks like he's recovering. He's gaining his confidence once again.
Hellion drop gets caught here.
Loses a drop.
Oh!
But
with that, though, ASD does regain the supply lead. He's got the gold-based mining. Jinro's about to have the gold-based mining. Both of these guys starting to get pretty even here in the middle of this mid-game. I'm enjoying this torch. 4 factories out for Jinro. ASD sticking with just the 1, sticking with a lot more bio units.
ASD setting up his army to be able to go around that, I don't know if that's the secret hallway or the common obvious.
The northern hallway.
Yeah.
They're both common knowledge to me.
Jinro has a supply depot there nicely to be able to scout this and be able to respond accordingly. He is going to need to pull back a lot of his forces, but ASD smartly knowing that Jinro knows where he is, he backs off with his army after taking out that first supply depot.
Exactly. Great moves by both of these players. Jinro going for the more long game, going for the getting those Vikings out, controlling the air, getting a good siege tank count, whereas ASD is kind of thinking about the now. And that can become problematic because he's got a pretty solid bio force.
Yeah, and Jinro actually is getting a planetary fortress at the gold. He really wants to fight in that area and defend it, while ASD is getting an orbital command trying to get for that mineral boost. But Jinro's getting his upgrades a lot earlier.
Yeah, so that's one thing that's really important. Remember, even though ASD's bio army is very mobile, when Jinro's siege tank count gets high enough, it just can no longer engage Jinro's army.
Yeah, especially when you have a position like this where you can keep the siege tanks behind a supply depot wall. It's hard for the bio units to get in and actually hit the siege tanks at all.
This is kind of what we saw. Well, hold that thought. A little Viking engagement here in the middle of the map. Jinro's still trying to assert that air dominance.
Meanwhile,
baiting some Marines into siege tanks. 2 drops up here at the north.
2 medevacs are positioned to be able to drop a bunch of units into the main of Jinro. If he can distract Jinro, he's also positioned to have his main army fight at the gold.
ASD is going to go for this attack. I don't agree with this at all. There's a siege tank. There's a planetary there. He's doing a lot of damage, though. Does pull back, but he lost a lot of units.
But the main thing is he's just trying to distract while his other force is going in there to take out the supply depots. What you want to do is you want to take down the supply depots, supply block your opponent as you trade armies. So you're able to replenish your army while your opponent is not. However, these units are going to get caught on the ramp of Jinro and get cleaned up quite nicely.
Right now, supply-wise, Jinro is up 16 supply. ASD very indecisive with his units here in the middle of the map, running bio back and forth, taking a lot of hits on that medevac.
Very nice positioning here by the point defense drones of Jinro. He's able to defend against the Marauders. He's also able to defend against some of the hits of the Vikings and really give him a huge advantage in that air battle as well as the ground battle.
Yeah, that drop by ASD forced Jinro to drop a few supply depots, but that was about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, Jinro, I think, is playing a better late game here. ASD just sticking with a bio that's great for a while, but it doesn't last all the time.
Almost saved that last tank by Jinro. Is nice that he had the 1 tank there, made it seem like ASD could go clean it up easily, but then he reinforced with 3 blue flame Hellions, took out all the Marines.
Oh, this is going to be great. He's going to actually use these Hellions behind the gold base, using a scan. Also could use those Vikings he's got air control with.
Very nice maneuver by Jinro.
ASD's in trouble, but he is going to do a very large counterattack around to the natural.
Oh, and he actually forces the orbital command to lift, and as it's lifting, his Vikings are doing a lot more damage. But, as you were saying, ASD is doing a counterattack. The scan goes down. He is able to push in past the supply depot walls, take down some of these tanks. The SCVs are going to need to come into the fight, but you don't want to do that when you have your own friendly tanks there to be able to do splash damage on yourself. That's what your opponent really wants you to do.
Exactly. Right now, as far as economy goes, both players on 3 bases because ASD did reclaim that 9 o'clock base. This is a really close game, but I think Jinro, again, with the siege tank count that he's got 16 tanks out. He's going to be able to demolish the Bio Army if he can just position his tanks properly, and Jinro has been known to be pretty good with his siege tank positioning.
Yeah, and these sensor towers that Jinro has up are going to help him do that a lot more. He gets that early warning. He knows when he should move his forces around like he's doing right now. He also has a really nice air control army, so he can get that extra vision on his opponent's tanks. His opponent's going to be forced to use scans instead of just having the free air vision.
Exactly. Plus, not only that, the Banshees come into play a lot.
Banshee almost goes down but stays alive, drops a point defense drone. These point defense drones actually last quite a while if they're not being attacked, so it's not terrible to use your energy on those in just positions that you want to hold for a little while.
Exactly. I mean, they last longer than it takes to recharge the energy. Some Hellions getting caught here.
The Hellions trying to go up there and scout that the third of ASD is there. He doesn't get the vision, but he knows that there's a force defending, so he can kind of assume that something's going on over on that side of the map.
Jinro splitting his tanks here, but they were unsieged. Point defense drone really helping out here, but ASD crushing through a lot of the tanks of Jinro. The problem is there are just so many of them, and this is what I'm talking about. If you have too much bio, they could just never close the distance fast enough to clean up those tanks.
Yeah, that's true. Jinro did lose a lot of tanks there, but he did have a lot more to defend. It was a decent trade by ASD because he can reinforce the bio a lot faster than Jinro can reinforce his tank army, but Jinro is able to slowly leapfrog his tanks up now.
Looks like Jinro wants to take that base over there where that barracks is burning. He's lifted his command center. It's floating in that direction.
Blue Flame Hellions versus the Marauders. They will win slightly, but they did lose a lot.
Marauders like the heat, like roaches like the heat. And here comes some tanks sieging up for ASD. A lot of them taking hits, though.
Nice scan going down for Jinro. He will be able to take down some of these early siege tanks. He drops a mule on... Oh, nice. Very nice. That was an awesome mule bomb. Probably the best I've ever seen. He was actually able to completely take down the siege tank of ASD.
Great job there. When you have an isolated tank like that, when you drop the mule, it assures that the most tanks will fire upon that mule at that one shot.
And the splash damage from tanks is actually quite considerable.
Yeah, I would consider it. I love when people use that word considerable. I'm like, yeah, I'd consider that. Alright, so Jinro still having that air control, asserting it here, trying to take out these medevacs. It looks like ASD is going to circumvent this planetary entirely and is going to go for, instead, an attack on the natural. No! He's actually going to siege up behind the gold base. Jinro realizes this pulls some SCVs away. He just can't do this without air control, though. He's going to have to use scans.
But he does have a lot of scans saved up. He's got orbital commands all over the map. Jinro does try another mule bomb, but the tanks are unsieging, so they actually don't do anything at all.
Resieges again. Scans. Taking out a lot of the hit points on this refinery, even some of Jinro's tanks. Banshee going to come in here to help out. And of course, this is going to force an unsiege. Some Hellions and Marauders battling over here.
Those Banshees doing a great job of picking off some retreating siege tanks. The tanks are going to go up and try to reinforce the left base for ASD. But
ASD
Jinro doing what he needed.
Always having a better... Hold that thought. Hellions cleaning up the gold base here. He has to be very careful. That's a huge chunk of SCVs. Close call there. ASD always having the better supply count. He has had more mining for a while, but Jinro just having a much better army is making this game so even.
Yeah, that's true. The bio units are very reinforceable, kind of like the Zerg units. But the thing is that per supply, they cost a lot less and are actually a lot less valuable. So while ASD is at 198 supply compared to Jinro's 155, the army counts are actually quite even.
Yeah, and this Banshee actually taking out these tanks, and this is part of what I'm talking about, having that air control, having these Banshees just allows you to do these things.
We have some Blue Flame Hellions in here. If he can move into the mineral line instead of attacking these Marauders, he can do a lot of economic damage to ASD.
It looks like he is finally going to be able to hit these SCVs. This is his first option to do that, and oh no, just barely not catching them.
Doing enough to make that attack worth it, but he wasn't quite focused on that. He had a lot of other stuff going on. He could have done a lot more damage if he'd been a bit more diligent with that force.
Exactly. Jinro now sieging up on ASD's gold base. He's taking a lot of hits there.
These Banshees, again, doing a nice job of keeping these tanks further back. He's not able to mine at the gold, but he is trading a lot of units here in Jinro's favor.
Looks like Jinro is going to be taken, or these tanks at least going to be taken out.
The tanks in the back are not sieged. They are not able to help the forward tanks at all. However, they are going to siege up enough to do some damage to this huge Marauder force.
This is a scary moment here for Jinro. A lot of these Marauders on very low hit points. And Jinro just wants to hold the line just a little bit longer. The problem is his right side base is very exposed. And in fact, ASD doesn't even know it's there. He's trying to land his command center there. He's going to find out there's a planetary fortress blocking it.
But as soon as he does find that out, he will be able to isolate Jinro's army and send over a small force to be able to take it out. It is a planetary fortress, like you were saying, so he can't do it with Marauders. He's going to have to send a tank or two, and that will take a while to take it down, but it keeps those SCVs occupied repairing, which ends up costing Jinro a lot.
Oh, nice. Goes in here with a tank to run siege. Nice move by ASD. Even having a Thor in this mix. Jinro taking a lot of damage there. Army's being traded, and now ASD is actually adding more tanks into his mix to kind of keep up with Jinro's tank count. Finally realizing he needs to do that to stay in this game.
Yeah, and Jinro trying to keep the pressure on in as many locations as possible. He had a Cloaked Banshee on the side, cloaked it just at the last moment to keep it alive and keep it going on. He's going to send more Blue Flame Hellions over there, try to actually do some serious damage this time instead of just a little bit. Meanwhile, he tried to send Blue Flame Hellions to the bottom right base as well.
Well, ASD is multitasking really good here. Now he's starting to siege up again behind Jinro's gold base. Remember, Jinro only has 2 mining bases right now. A lot of these SCVs repairing Banshees to try to keep them alive. Taking a lot of hits from those siege tanks, though, are those SCVs. Right now, Jinro has 4 Banshees out on the map. He's got 10 Vikings, so these Banshees are going to really try to control. There's a Thor here, though. It does a lot of damage to Banshees. Also has great range.
Yeah, but those Banshees are going to clean up some of those Marauders. A lot of those Marauders are extremely hurt. It's good for ASD to keep them alive, but they do die quite quickly when an engagement actually occurs.
Yeah.
And finally, ASD sees that the planetary fortress is there, is scared, and will run away. I would not want to be the operator of that orbital command.
Nope. So you want me to land next to that twin Ibix cannon? I don't want to do it. Jinro having a huge tank count here next to his planetary. So far, tank counts, though, 12 for Jinro, 10 for ASD. His tanks are starting to catch up. He's going to siege up here. He's going to try to rush down this planetary, splitting his units up quite nicely. It does fall. Jinro is in trouble. He's only got that 1 mining gold base, which is mining out pretty quickly here.
Is mining out quickly, and it's also got a really nice net of siege tanks for ASD, but they are going to get wiped out quite quickly to these Banshees that are going on here. Jinro cloaking them nicely, spreading them out so that it will take 2 scans to be able to kill them. The Thor going down, once that happens, all these siege tanks are going to be left alone. It's going to be great for Jinro to be able to just slowly take out all these tanks. Once he does that, he is going to need to do a counterattack very soon, or he's going to fall further and further behind to ASD's 2 mining bases.
Ooh, I like this.
Jinro's
Jinro's going to land these Vikings. He's going to do a ton of damage. This time he's actually literally going to do damage. Nope. I take it back. The bio. ASD is on top of all of Jinro's harassments. He doesn't miss a single beat.
Yeah, he's being very mobile with his Bioforce, being very secure with his tank force, not overextending too much. He does lose some tanks, but not without doing some damage first.
Baiting these Marines forward. We'll hold that thought. Just get a shot of the main base.
One Thor is actually stuck because of the building placement of ASD.
That was pretty funny. Jinro trying to bait the Vikings, bait with the Vikings, the Marines into siege tanks. But the fact of the matter is Jinro is now at half the supply of ASD. He's trying to make... He's moved his command center from his natural to that lower ground expansion to try to catch up, but he's so far behind at this point. ASD finally just switched over to siege tanks, and then Jinro just couldn't abuse the fact that he had air control any longer. Couldn't defeat that bio army. Now he's got bio and siege tanks, a really strong army. A lot of Jinro's supply is in those Vikings.
Yeah, the Air Force you can't really do a whole lot with if your opponent's not also going air until later in the game when you can transition it to something like battle cruisers. But the thing is, Jinro does not have the gas to do that, and he does not have the breathing room to be able to get that tech switch.
I think this may be one of the final pushes from ASD. I think he's going to attack from 2 sides. One side coming from the west. Actually, he may just go and rush down these tanks and kill the planetary. Or actually, he may just not do anything at all. Here he goes, running forward on top of these siege tanks. There aren't very many over here, and the Thor's doing a ton of damage to Jinro's Air Force during all of that as well. This gold base barely has any minerals left, so even if he kills it, it's not a huge hit to Jinro. He has to make something happen, though, with the forces he has left. He can't remake forces, essentially. He just doesn't have any money.
Yeah, the thing is that Jinro is really far behind in the economy, but the armies are pretty close right now. If Jinro can force a key battle that is very close to one of ASD's production facilities, it's not going to be too bad for Jinro. The left base for ASD has been continuing to mine, but we do have a battle here. This could be the deciding battle of the game. If Jinro can hold this, take down all the bio units, then he should be able to take down the economy of ASD and win the game. However, the Marauders are going to be able to clean this up quite nicely. The Thors are taking out the Banshees. We have more mules dropping down. ASD is feeling very confident in this position.
Yeah, I don't think Jinro... I mean, I have to say Jinro played a better style in this game, and ASD's style was maybe a little bit flawed, but ASD realized it in the middle of the game. Jinro didn't capitalize on it as much as he should have. Now he's got half the supply of ASD. He's got 1 mining base. He's got like 2 gold patches left at his gold base, whereas ASD's got bases everywhere. These Banshees doing a great job of harassing, though. Each of these Banshees starting to rack up the kills.
And 2 more Blue Flame Hellions going in. Those Marauders are extremely low, so the Hellions are going to be able to kill them with only 1 volley. If he doesn't attack the turret, he can kill a lot of SCVs.
Yeah, Jinro, just his multitasking is not showing up as well as ASD's here in this game.
If he'd sent those Hellions down when all those SCVs were transferring, he could have killed all of them in 1 volley, but instead he wanted to attack the turret.
Yeah, Jinro just not showing the best multitasking here in this game, showing a good style of TBT. But if you're someone like ASD and you go for the bio style, if you have the multitasking to deal with the Hellions, deal with the Banshees, deal with your opponent's army being in several different areas, you have to find all those weak points. If you can do that, you can play ASD style as long as you transition later, and that's exactly what ASD did. I love his addition of the Thors in the mix. They do have a great amount of range. He's always scaring Jinro's Vikings away, scaring the Banshees away with those Thors.
Yeah, he was really spreading out the forces of Jinro by having those expansions all over the place. And because he had the bio army, he was able to defend it quite nicely. Jinro being aggressive with these Blue Flame Hellions, but not maximizing their effectiveness. If you were a little bit stronger with those, he would be in a lot better shape this game.
Right now, what ASD wants to do is just recover, remax, get a very strong army. A lot of his army, even though he had a higher supply than Jinro, for a lot of the game, his army was very weak, a lot of them in the red. He wants to get a very solid army before he tries to attack Jinro again, and this does give Jinro a chance to recover a little bit, but he's not even mining from that low ground base. We'll get a shot of it in a second because ASD has positioned units on the high ground above it. There they are now, so he's forced to lift that. These Hellions that Jinro keeps sending have been spotted yet again.
And the interesting thing about ASD's style here is he actually has 0 medevacs. All he's doing is sending the Bioforces in, trading them
away. A drop over
and
here, but also at the main base, or rather the only mining base of Jinro. He does attack here. Sorry to interrupt you there, but
No
you're
problem.
exactly right. He's just using these forces, forcing engagements, keeping the tank count low, and GG, ASD will advance to the round of 8. 2-0ing Jinro, a very solid Terran player, one of the best foreigners out here in Korea. Impressive play by ASD. His style, I don't think was the best style to use, but he used it properly, transitioned at the right moment. Great play by ASD.
Yeah, ASD is a player that it looks like he's behind us the majority of the game, but then he somehow just ekes out the victory in the end.
He's just so mobile. His multitasking is better, and I know we don't talk about APM that much. APM isn't all that important, but I checked the APM tab right at the end of that game, and the APM of ASD was twice that of Jinro's. He was just doing so much around the map. He's got Marauders in 6 different groups. There's Hellions coming in. He's attacking those Hellions. He's positioning siege tanks on one side while he attacks the bio on another. He's doing drops. He's just all over the place, man.
Yeah, he did a really nice job of reacting to the Hellion attacks of Jinro. He was able to pull his SCVs away as well as bringing the Marauders to be able to clean them up. In addition to all the attacks that you were saying, which diverged Jinro's attention. And when Jinro wasn't attending to his Hellions, they didn't do as much damage as they could have, like
exactly.
I was saying.
He just needed to be a little bit more attentive. Jinro played a very passive, patient style, I want to say.
Yep.
And normally with that style, you just slowly keep moving closer and closer with your Vikings, with your Banshees. Jinro was too hung up, I think, on defending the planetary. Didn't really get aggressive. But on the same note, you know, Jinro couldn't really get away from that planetary because if he did for a second, ASD was going to run in with like 12 Marauders, a bunch of Marines, and just a few siege tanks and kill it. So ASD was just aggressive enough to where Jinro's style was just not as effective. He kept taking out the tanks. Whenever he found an isolated group of tanks, he took it out because when you get to that critical amount of siege tanks, the Marauders and the Marines, they can just never, ever, ever get there.
Yeah, and the thing is, Jinro did put up those 2 sensor towers, so he did have a lot of the vision, so he was able to move back and forth where he needed to go, but there was just way too much going on. It was really very difficult for him to handle.
Yeah, I think Jinro played great through the early game and the mid game and even the beginning of the late game.
Yep.
But when ASD made that transition, when he realized, okay, you're just only making tanks, I need to start getting my own tanks, he just kept trading and trading and trading, taking more bases, just using that multitasking. And once he traded enough and had a higher economy, he was able to get his tanks out and then have a better tank army, and he kept the bio army as well. Jinro's supply, a lot of that supply, like 20 or 30 to even 40 of that supply was in Vikings that accomplished almost nothing. If Jinro had used those Vikings a little bit more, used those Banshees a little bit more, that would have been worth it, but in the end, it just wasn't.
Well, he had those Vikings which were able to give him the vision of his opponent's tanks, but the opponent was just using scans. He had plenty of orbital commands compared to Jinro's planetary fortresses, and because of that energy difference, he was able to not need to invest into the Air Force. So Jinro's Air Force wasn't as useful as you were saying. However, in both games, Jinro did a really good job of getting the late game Banshees. Banshees we've seen a lot used in the early game as a harassment unit, but Jinro was able to use them all throughout the entire game and really make them as effective as possible.
Yeah, he capitalized on them really nicely. I think if he'd done just a little bit more and used it in conjunction with his tanks, every time he forced ASD to unsiege, bring his own siege tanks forward, do stuff like that. That could have been a really great way for him to get back in that. I mean, when I say get back in it, he had control of the entire game, actually. I mean, until the very end, he had control. There was just that one moment where ASD had too many bases for him to handle, and he couldn't keep up with ASD's multitasking. He was trying to do mule drops. He was trying to use the Banshees and the Vikings. If he had just when he had that advantage, if he had just pushed it and kept ASD from taking those expansions, he probably would have won, I have to say.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that statement. But also, another thing that Jinro did great, I hate to keep bringing that up even though Jinro didn't win here, but he showed a lot of brilliant play.
He did play really well.
Those mule bombs, they were crucial. Well, not crucial, but they could have made a big difference. He dropped a mule in the right exact location to be able to get the splash damage on the siege tanks.
Yeah.
Took out a few of them, softened up some other ones. It's exactly what you need to be doing.
Yeah, he did it actually the right way. A lot of people just drop mule bombs in between like 4 tanks and then none of the tanks fire because none of them are firing the mule. He did it where there's 1 tank over here and 2 tanks over here. Hits the one over here, so the 2 tanks attack it. That's what he was doing. So we can take a look at all of the round of 16 results here. I'll go back through them again. Dream, Leenock, Noblesse, and Tass are advancing. That was yesterday. Now today, Bonbons took out Tails. Puzzle advanced over Sheth. Happy edged out Yu-Gi-Oh! In a pretty good series there. And Jinro, unfortunately, was taken out by ASD, but played really well. And I'm actually looking forward to see ASD going on into the future based on his style. It's like a mix between Marine King style and Pult Prime style, I feel
Marauder
like.
King.
Marauder King.
Right.
We're going to call him that. It's like Pult Prime style where you get a bunch of Marauders out, but then you control the late game with tanks, and you're just very mobile. Check that out down there, twitter.com/GOMTV. You can follow GOMTV there. You can get all sorts of news updates. You can follow Torch at Torch Game. You can follow me at FXO Wolf. You can go to m.gomtv.net to check out the site on your mobile phone.
And check out the schedule. If anyone hasn't been looking at it, this week we did have a 1:10 p.m. Korean Standard Time session. That's only for this week. Next week we're going to have the round of 8 for Code A at 6:10 p.m. Korean Standard Time on Monday.
I was just pointing down there. Later on today, we've got FXO playing against Zenex, and of course, NS Hoso is playing against another team. I think it's Foyu today, yeah.
So we will actually see a lot of these players playing once again later on today in the GSTL. GSTL happens on Thursday and Friday every single week for the next 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And if you haven't gotten the premium ticket for that, you can do it. It's for the entire season, not just for the first month.
Yeah, it's a lot of content. It's a lot more than you guys maybe realize. It's like so much stuff. And if you get all these packages, you can watch all the VODs. So just kind of keep track of what you want to watch, where it is. Use the mobile site. Use the regular GOMTV site. Look up everything. Keep track of if your team's playing on Jupiter days or on Venus days. So you can be sure to tune in. But you should watch everything anyways.
And set up some fantasy teams with your friends. Get a little bets going.
That kind of stuff is just awesome. It's what helps esports grow. Those little betting teams, those little guys, your friends, you bet with them. They're the esports goats. Yep. They bring esports up. I'm making it a thing. It's a thing now. Esports goats. Torch is like, I don't want this to be a thing. I don't like the idea of esports goats.
I want to be an esports mule, but not in Jinro's army.
Yeah, some people out there are like esports eagles. They take the esports goats and drop them off of the mountain and then eat them. Have you seen those YouTube videos?
I haven't, but I heard about it a lot.
Yeah, there are eagles that take goats off of mountains and drop them like hundreds of feet and kill them and then eat them. Thanks to G-Skill, thanks to Pepsi. We're going to wrap up here today. Tastosis will be here in about an hour and a half to cast the GSTL. See you guys next time. Hanging out with all the friends, living for